After listening to the very relevant, solid presentation of Colin, I would now reduce my 50-page presentation to 5. Colin, you really gave a lot of substance to the emergence of a national collaboration policy. That's right, in a decentralized setting. But before I walk through my reduced from 50 to 5 slides, let me give a few points on the main ideas we presented. First of all, I'm very comfortable with your use of letters. If you have heard about my 3 A's, the 5 A's, and I have 5 R's, which I really not miss out on this opportunity. But you repeatedly alluded to Busan, which was the 4th high-level forum on aid effectiveness. The Philippines was represented by 2 ministers, the Minister of Finance, Secretary Turismo, and then Minister Rolando of NEDA. But I was also privileged to be part of the delegation, along with Assistant Secretary Stella Doriano from Finance. DBM would have been represented by Undersecretary Laura Pascua, but because of some pressing concerns, pressing here does not mean we have to iron clothes. Pressing concerns like during the budget, this was in November, Laura, she sent a very able Assistant Secretary in the person of Ruby. But Busan is very close to the heart of the Philippines and Philippine government particularly, because when Busan culminated, when the efforts on heart operation culminated in Busan, the Philippines started at the outset with the Monterrey Summit, and then the milestone, which is the Paris Declaration on Aid Effectiveness. Even at the time we were talking about aid effectiveness, there was this dissonance and discomfort on our part. Why we were focusing too much on aid effectiveness when the real relevant word should have been development effectiveness, because we combine aid and other resources together to support our national and local budgets. But I guess at that time, in 2005, the world was not ready to talk about development effectiveness. It was primarily dominated by aid sponsors, so-called donors that we now call development partners, and we partner countries were trying to advocate a set of reforms that would put countries at the center of development. And yes, our MNE forum and an MNE network is basically country-led and not, to be sure, UNICEF or other sponsors-led initiative. And as I mentioned, with the team of Director Eric and our counterparts in government, we have managed to move on to where we are today. But let me draw something from Busan, which up to now brings rich bell to my ears. And this was the very well-applauded speech of the Queen of Jordan, when she said, "It is all about creating prosperity." In other words, the appeal is not so much on eliminating poverty, which is all our mission, but on creating prosperity. And I think this is where you bring in the very strong motivation of the kind of words you choose, not basically going sloganeering, but if we try to internalize the essence of the phrase, creating prosperity, I think this is all our aspiration. By the end of the day, while poverty elimination is a task of all of us, the man on the street may not be able to relate very closely to the mission of eliminate poverty, but surely will respond more positively to creating prosperity. The second thing that I want to bring in now, and this is also something I picked up, not in Busan, but in Seoul, Korea. And we had a seminar on MNE. The problem with MNE is really the ampersand, the M ampersand E. And when we bring the 2 letters of the alphabet together, 80% of the time, the emphasis would be on the M. And we basically, I guess, take the comfort that since M and E brings monitoring and evaluation together, to the extent that we do one letter or the other, that gives us the level of comfort. But today we are trying to bring greater emphasis on the evaluation part. And this is really where knowledge, resources, and experience will have to bear with us and bring us to more meaningful points. We have to position M&E or evaluation particularly in the overall context of the public sector management cycle, particularly results orientation. And here you will see that the cycle will constitute the planning, programming, implementing for results, monitoring for results, and evaluation for results. The upper section, which is circumscribed by the circle, shows much progress and where the emphasis has been with respect to Philippine reforms. And you will see in planning for results, as I mentioned in my welcome remarks, the Philippine Development Plan, as well as the different instruments that execute the plan, are really focused on results. And that would include the results matrix. And in the budgeting process, NEDA and DPM, as well as the other site overseas, continue to work on the so-called building blocks to ensure that whatever is agreed to in the plan are programmed and budgeted for results, and with the various instruments available with the different agencies really enable us to at least manage that portion of the public sector management in terms for results. But there's a heavy need, the pressing need, to go down to the lower concentric circle, which is implementing for results and monitoring and evaluation for results. Many of the 9 agencies are still fixated in delivering on their expenditure. There is nothing wrong in delivering on our expenditure targets to the extent that the expenditures are linked to the outputs. Then as a proxy, results are likely to be achieved with the budget as programmed and delivered. But oftentimes the connection between budget and outputs are missed out, especially if expenditure targets are met on account of inefficiencies such as cost overruns and the likes. So, but the focus should be, we have to get our sector objectives translated into outputs and supported by the budget in terms of delivering on those results. And we do monitor and evaluate for results. Incidentally, as we get into the midterm of the plan, NEDA is in the stage of finalizing the socio-economic report, a public accountability document that would tell the taxpayers, the bureaucrats, whether the agencies and us have delivered on our plan targets in terms of what we committed to the plan. Surely, without raising too much expectations, we realize, as Colin had mentioned, that the real world is fraught with constraints to a point that it's very hard to do evaluation where you are faced with data limitations, lack of baseline, and that is where the slide will bring us to later in the morning to talk about why it is important to come up with an evaluation policy. I'm sure this is just a repeater to all of you. We use evaluation essentially to learn. Our learning tool, as a learning tool, we are able to draw from the experience that will help us improve the design of programs and projects. But beyond that, looking at improvement of programs and project design, it is also enabling institutions to develop a wealth of information through this knowledge creation. But beyond the learning, likewise, the accountability mechanism that can be brought to evaluation, we are able to report to taxpayers and the various stakeholders whether the resources that we have mobilized and allocated to so-called priorities are delivering on this. And apart from accountability, the Department of Budget and Management is now using more and more evidence from evaluation to ensure that we are allocating resources not only on the right things, but also on PAPs that are likely to be effective. Next. I don't want to overwhelm you with this timeline. It spans from, if that can be zoomed in later on, but the milestones that we have picked here spans from 1987 to 2011. The 1987 was the year NEDA was reorganized, And under EO 230, NEDA's fresh mandate included monitoring and evaluation. But it took another 5 years in 1992 that the Investment Coordination Committee, the committee of the NEDA board that approves major development programs and projects, that mandated the use of results indicators, the so-called results monitoring, results monitoring and evaluation format in our language, that is, I think, Form 6 of the ICC. As we move on from 1992, and you will later see that it took another almost 20 years from 87 to 2011 to bring us to AO 25, I alluded to in the opening remarks, welcome remarks earlier. Here is an attempt to now bring the bureaucracy to not only focus but also manage for results. And these milestones basically assures us that we have the building blocks and we have experience, and the challenge is how to draw from these building blocks and come up with a very coherent, meaningful, applicable evaluation policy. I think Colin explained the meaning of evaluation policy. While we talk about doing evaluation, there is really no coherent set of a roadmap that would ensure standardization of how evaluation will be carried out. We are sometimes driven by what certain donors' biases are, and it is gratifying, if not very refreshing, to hear from Colin that existing evaluation policies are now being updated, reviewed for their timeliness, meaningfulness, and relevance. But notwithstanding, even if we have AO 25, even if we have the ICC mandate to focus on results, they come in different forms and sizes, and they are also required at different levels without really feeding upon into each other, from project to programs to sector to national and regional goals. MPI evaluation policy, they do have a common set of principles, including independence, credibility, impartiality, but to us in government, we think usefulness and timeliness are important principles that must be found in an evaluation policy. The problem with major programs, including the CCP, as other big programs, when we stop a program because we want evaluation to set through, it takes a while to do evaluation. So we are caught between learning from evaluation before we scale up further the program, or we basically have to do back of the envelope. Again, we are challenged by robustness, credibility, contestability of our evaluation findings. Oftentimes, we are confronted with evaluation reports that are largely not based on empirical evidence, but are based also on judgment. This is not to say that judgment would not have a place in evaluation. In certain instances, when you do evaluation, judgments are made to the extent that they are warranted, but whoever makes a judgment will have to also declare, disclose, that the basis for such judgment are the following assumptions or data. So the user takes into account whatever limitations such results are from evaluation. What do we cover with evaluation? Of course, the grand plan is we do a good evaluation of the entire plan. We can do also sectoral evaluation or departmental evaluation. Surely policies, programs, and projects, particularly those that meet a certain threshold, billions. In I think it was in Canada that Eric and I looked at a program that would require X million Canadian dollars cannot proceed more than 5 years without evaluation first being presented to a panel. I think Yusek Pascua, who sits there with us attentively listening to this long-held dream, are of the same view that if we had the benefit of evaluation, we would have been more efficient, effective, and very much results-driven. As we mentioned, we need to come up in the process of this formulating of an evaluation policy, agree on a set of evaluation protocols. what processes, activities that will ensure that evaluation are timely, credible, impartial, and informed decision making. Oftentimes, we are confronted with budget constraints. To the extent that we can bring in cost efficiency or cost effectiveness in our approaches, then I think that would be a major leap forward. Standards of measurements and analysis so that there is greater comparability of results and wider, therefore, usefulness of the evaluation results. Next. Managing the evaluation itself ensures that we have to have certain parameters that would make this evaluation be conducted in a professional, ethical manner. And a large part of this will not only be based on ethics, but also on competencies of the evaluation team. And later on, we will see the need for building the capacity to be able to respond to the requirements of a sound evaluation. Most evaluation are still conducted on a mere compliance basis because somebody required that before the end of the program an evaluation is carried out, or after a few years of program completion, an evaluation is carried out. But I think that would be two-thirds waste of resources if we do not use the results of evaluation. And the manner by which we are able to feed evaluation timely to the right decision-making processes and fora is important. We need to promote the use of evaluation and get people who make these decisions to be accountable on the basis of what they decide on. Here is a rundown, surely not necessarily cast in stone, of what would be an indicative set of responsibilities of the key players. I did not mean to demean others there by simply putting a lot of question marks. But what is evident here, NEDA, and this is a discussion internally, should NEDA have the expertise to the evaluation? We said it's not likely they will sustain expertise. The salary rates that we are giving, they are likely to join development partners as soon as they get the capacity. But NEDA will still promote evidence-based. I did not allude to anyone in this room, but I think you know many of the NEDA, evidence-based development planning. We will ensure that when we do coordinate the plan, that it is not on the basis of mere political platforms, but there is evidence to say that in order for us to achieve competitiveness, we have to address the binding constraints. And surely this plan was drawn with a lot of good research, analytical work that we were drawing from. So we will continue to promote evidence-based development planning. We should be giving evaluation guidance, reviewing the quality of evaluation, providing strategic directions for evaluation, including better practices, principles, and setting good standards. DBM, we will work with DBM for increasing budget for the conduct of evaluation. Many of the implementing agencies are born to be builders, but not evaluators. And evaluation has been thought of as a point in the end of your career. People want to build rather than to go back in time. And normally people doing culinary phenotype is true in other agencies. But it used to be true that when you are assigned to evaluation, that's practically the end of your career. But the world has made evaluation. I started my work in NEDA at the key role as chief of the post-evaluation division. And I thought that was the end of my career. And I guess it was because of the evaluation that my ability to draw from experiences and lessons learned enabled me to be to continue to be relevant rather than to be an exposed man. But apart from just increasing the budget for evaluation, DBM is seen and is actively doing now using evidence information to allocate resources. The question of even the president in our NEDA board meetings, how sure are we that this program is likely to deliver results? And that is a very common question being asked by the president. I'm sure Yusek Anna will nod her head. Because every time we present to the president will always question the effectiveness of the design and whether there is evidence that it had worked, especially when agencies tend to be grandiose in their design and very eclectic in the components. Implementing agencies expected me to conduct evaluation. The impartiality there is actually offset by engaging experts or people within the organization who have very little to do with the planning of a particular program, but we see implementing agencies themselves promoting, if not conducting evaluation and use of the evaluation findings. The others, COA is a very important partner because when we talk of credibility and robustness, many of our indicators and means of verification, source of data, have really not been checked out for integrity. This is something we think that the Commission on Audit, as they move beyond financial compliance and even performance evaluation, will help us ensure the integrity of the data sources, especially the data sources are generated by the agencies themselves. The academe, this is the strength where we can draw strength in terms of analytical tools, methodologies. This is where many of our professors in the academe can contribute to bringing about more doable methodologies. I started my earlier career using input-output tables in analyzing the impact of an irrigation project, and I said, how large should an input-output table be to do this? And we thought that it was really difficult for people, practitioners like us, to be working along those methodologies. And Professor Jun Miral will be able to contribute later on his experience and perspectives in the development of methodologies. Civil society, here we have been challenged by civil society when we talk about ownership. They will expand the concept of ownership to be democratic ownership. And we said, well, the Philippines is a democracy. I really have to understand why the emphasis on democratic ownership is. But civil society, I appreciate their role and their perspective. They continue to challenge us to think beyond the tradition, to think outside the box, and to be more inclusive in more meaningful terms rather than use inclusive growth as buzzwords as if they mean they are meaningful to all of us. Local government units at the forefront of development, we think they're the front line of showing us whether national programs are indeed generating the results that are happening, but more than just looking at evidence, also ensuring that the resources go to the right things. And as I move down my last two slides, and I am asked to wrap up, what are the things that we need to do apart from as soon as we get the evaluation policy in place? As Colin had mentioned, it has to be updated, ensure that they are indeed responding to our expectations. This forum would have been shortchanged if we had the answers to many of the questions that are related to the formulation of an evaluation policy. The Secretariat, as soon as we gather more and more of your thoughts, insights, and experiences, will take the leadership in defining the timelines and activities. Hopefully, get the opportunity with the updated plan, which we hope to be launched by the President in the midterm of the plan, which is next year, to at the same time bring into reality an evaluation policy that will guide us not only in the remaining 3 years of the plan, but in the years beyond the planning period. As I promised you, and I think a few of you, I will not want to miss out an opportunity not talking about the 3 R's to contribute to Colin's 5 A's. And I think I always ask myself, do people get the message of my presentations, especially when they're long? And my only way of comforting myself is to leave 3 R's that I think is better remembered. The first R, and this is couched in the realm of public sector management, is resources on the right things. And when you have a plan that articulates the right things or priorities, and with the support of the Department of Budget and Management on the finance we mobilize resources and allocate them to the right things. The first R is a very important R in public sector management. The second R, after allocating resources on the right things, is to ensure that we do things right. And this is where procurement reforms, disbursement reforms, M&E processes enable us to not only allocate resources on the right things, but also do things right. And that efficiency ensures or improves the chances of bringing us to the third R, which is results achieved sustainably. On that note, I hope I did not bore you to many of the things that should come up. We hope to have been stimulated and contributed towards hopefully formulating the evaluation policy in time for the next or the updated plan and reinvigorated, revalidated results matrix. Thank you, everyone.